Okay, thank you.
Rolling on both? Yes, sir. Okay, great. So we usually start off with just an introduction. So for the purposes of our editors and also to give the guys a chance to balance out your audio properly,
Yeah.
will you please state your name, spell it for our records, and then give us a title that you would like to be identified by?
Okay. Hi. Hi, I'm Donna Grimes, Donna Grimes. I'm the Assistant Director for African American Affairs, and I staff the subcommittee on African American Affairs for the U.S. Catholic Bishops.
Thank you. So let's start with what brought you to your faith?
My parents, my grandparents. I have been Catholic. On my mother's side, we've been Catholic for generations. I can go back at least 5 generations because my family is from Southern Maryland, and so there was a history there of, of slavery, of course, but also, the Catholic faith was very strong in Southern Maryland. My father was converted to Catholicism when he married my mother. And that's what they did back in the 50s, right? To make sure that they would bring up the children in the faith. And but he was all in, and they were very much equally yoked, as you say. She was very involved in ministry, and he was too. Very active with the Knights of Columbus, former state deputy. So I grew up in a Catholic bubble, really, and even more specifically in a Black Catholic bubble. I thought everybody was Catholic, growing up, because I went to Catholic school from kindergarten through high school. My friends in the neighborhood walked to public school, but we went to Catholic school, and everybody I knew in my family was Catholic, So it was surprise, surprise, as I got older and moved out more to see there was much more diversity, in terms of faith.
Talk to me about that. Yeah.
Well,
What that journey of discovery was like.
I went to school and grew up in this neighborhood, which is the Brookland area in Northeast Washington, D.C., and it's a very integrated neighborhood. It's always been very, very diverse. The parish was very mixed, Black and white worked together. So I grew up with that picture, that image of this is how it is, and and of course matured through high school and other experiences. So
what was it in terms of like finding out what were some of those early experiences of finding out that the wider world of maybe it wasn't as what's the word maybe homogeneous from an ideology standpoint out in the world.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's been very interesting. Because I had gone to Catholic school from kindergarten through high school, I said, I'm not going to a Catholic college. I'm going to go to public school, right? And I wanted to see more of the world. And I took courses in, Eastern religions, and just really expanded. And I've always loved that. I've been very interested in, I to tell you something, the time when I was coming up, the folk masses were very popular. And that's where I started to get more involved with seeing how we worship in different ways, even within the Catholic Church. And the good thing with my father being a convert to the faith was that he was very open to, if I would find out, Daddy, there's a folk mass happening over here around near Catholic University. It's an outdoor mass. That was the era of, I'm dating myself, but the era, I'm talking late 60s, early 70s, so you can imagine. But just to feel the presence of God with people who were, were young and sort of countercultural, and it was a diverse group, Black and white mostly, and it was just an exciting time, eye-opening, and really helped to strengthen my faith to see that it's more than just what I was used to in terms of going to my own parish over and over, and ultimately, because he knew of my interest, my father. Mentioned to me, there's this parish in Southeast Washington, and there's this pastor there, and George Stallings, and you might find that interesting. And I thank him every day because I've been there since for the early 80s. I went and immediately joined, met my husband, we brought him there, we raised our children in that parish, and that's where I could see the real coming together of the Black church and within the Catholic Church. So I grew up, let's just say, in a black Catholic bubble. In the one hand, it was very traditional, but by the time I joined St. Teresa of Avila Parish, that's when I could see, oh wow, there's so much more to it, and I can bring my culture to that. I mean, the music, the preaching style, all those things that I felt I might have been missing by being a Catholic, you know, just a traditional Catholic. And I haven't looked back. Haven't looked back.
So, yeah, let's talk about that, because the importance of diversity within the liturgy, within the Catholic Church at large, and then we'll follow that up with a diversity question within the Black Catholic community as well, because that's a large community.
Absolutely.
All sorts of different people and thoughts and ideas.
Yeah. I mean, the Catholic Church is very diverse, just like the United States is a very diverse country. Catholic Church is diverse, you know. And working here at the Bishops' Conference, for the first few years I worked with the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, but first 12 years or so. And then the last 12, 13 years, I've worked with the Secretariat for Cultural Diversity in the Church. And that's where I've really come to have an appreciation for the wide diversity, the different styles of worship. We do we support multicultural masses, multicultural liturgies and prayer, and to hear the different languages, to hear people praying as you would pray, you know, but in their own language, because they say you pray in your native tongue, whatever that is, you know. That's where your deepest prayers and your closest bond with God is coming through that native tongue. But also to see the different traditions, like in many of the African Catholic communities, they bring in the gospel on the back. They carry in the book of the gospel. And it's just a beautiful thing, of course, with the music and the movement. I mean, it's holistic, and some of the Asian as well, Asian Catholic expressions I found to be very interesting, coming in with incense and with music from their cultures, you know, the Bengali and the others. And just to see, God is all over this is how God is, showing himself, herself, you know, in all that diversity. It's not like there's only one way to be. And that's one of the things that we really need to see in the church today. We say that we're diverse. We say we're universal. Catholic means universal. Okay. And then what? But do you really see that universality? Do you accept that universality? Do you allow people to express their faith the way it makes sense to them? And the one thing I've learned through my work with cultural diversity and my work here at the conference is that we express our faith, embrace our faith through our culture. We understand the gospel and the stories of the gospel through our own experiences. And I'll give you an example. We talk about the Exodus story. The Exodus story means a lot to people of African descent because of the history of enslavement. And liberation is a very high value, probably the highest value for Black people. And then for the Native people, the story of the Exodus might be a little different. And because they were in a position, they lost a lot of what they had, a lot of the freedom and autonomy they had. I saw it had the opportunity to visit the Sioux Spiritual Center in South Dakota, and to look at the Stations of the Cross and the artwork there. So they had their philosophy, excuse me, was evident in the pictures, where you don't just, the person who's done you wrong, you know, so they use maybe the Crow tribe did them wrong. They're not cast out forever, you know. But you know, they're the villains in one sense, and so they have a different. I know I'm going on a little bit, but they have a different view of the Exodus story. But for us, the Exodus story means something. We're still working through that.
So, what has been the process of because the church has, you know, a reputation for rigidity because of its traditionalism.
Mm-hmm.
So has that been a difficult process, getting that kind of openness to the church? Because that requires, what you were just talking about is really, on a cultural level, we have to listen to where we all are.
Yes.
You have to first understand, and then you can meet that need as you understand it by integrating in it. Has that
Yeah.
been difficult with the tradition
I tell you, it is difficult. It is difficult. I think we're making progress, but it's been very difficult. What I've seen in my experience in life, and then even more as working professionally in the church, that there's been a lot of resistance to that. Because, and if you look at the pictures from Vatican II, and you see how Pope Saint John the Second, 23rd, excuse me, was lifted up and.
Will you go back and just restate it so we don't have to?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, but I say when we go back, when we look at look at the photographs from the church around the era of Vatican II, and you see how the papacy was lifted up as royalty, and you see it in the vestments and the lace and the mitres and all of that. That was kind of that was the understanding there. That's not the world of today, and in fact most people would reject that today. I think that part I'm sorry, I lost track of the question.
No, it's exactly on that train. How has integrating those kinds of cultural differences been with the church in general?
I think there's still a struggle. I think that people are still, kind of fighting it in some cases. But then there's been an embrace as well. One of the things that has helped is that in 2018, the bishops did issue a letter against racism and brought these issues to the forefront. And there was a lot of discussion in the country, in the civic world as well as in the religious world. And so the church, even with the creation of the Secretariat of Cultural Diversity in the church, there's that recognition that we can't do business as usual. We can't just do things the way we did them before and expect everybody to just fall in line. And that was never really the vision of God. That was really never the way that Jesus set forth for us. So the church really has, there's diversity within the church. And then there's some who are today just realizing what that means. How do we work together? How do we not exclude others? How do we include? We say we want to be inclusive, and we sing all are welcome, but what do we really mean when we say that? All are welcome. And there is an element in the country that is really pushing against that, to say, wait a minute, you're going too far, too fast, you're going away from where we should be. But if we really, the more that we allow God to work within us, the more we are able to see that we really do need to make room for one another and listen to one another and accompany one another. Excuse me.
Sure. Do you need some water?
No, just.
If you do, don't hesitate.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So, I think it's incumbent to the process that the issues that are in front of the church from the standpoint of diversity, integration, assimilating the ideas that surround us just as a society on a larger community level, they mirror that's outside the church and that comes in. So
Absolutely.
talk to me a little bit about that and how,
Yeah.
the tide of times also affects how we go about understanding our relationships.
Well, I think sometimes we have to look at the young folks and see what they're doing. They understand diversity and that they grew up side by side with people who were speaking different languages and looked different from them and, came from different economic backgrounds in many cases. Not entirely. There are pockets of the country that are very homogeneous and, they don't, and people say, I never met a black person before, or, I never met a black Catholic. And that's one thing I experienced working for the church. When I first started working for the church, so many people were assumed I was a convert to the faith, even though some of our strongest leaders are converts to the faith. But they assumed, they didn't know that black Catholics have been in the country since the 15th century, going back to the very beginning, back to, if you look at Florida, 16th century and, St. Augustine, Florida, and just the faithfulness of black Catholics throughout. But I think that, the church is mirroring that. One of the shortcomings right now for us as a church is that we're not going to be the church, we're not going to be relevant if we don't recognize that not only are we a diverse church, but we need to be inclusive, we need to be culturally competent, we need to find ways to work together and communicate with one another and give each other, allow a margin of grace for one another, and it's not easy, it's not a quick fix. that it really takes time. It's a process, and we have to be patient with that and continue to work in that direction. So I think the church, we have the right words. We use the right words. If you look at the bishop's statements, well written. I mean, they're saying the right things, but where's the action behind it? And I think that's the thing that has been the most, it's the most telling to me. You know, you say that, actually that statement, pastoral statement against racism was approved almost unanimously. And it came at a time just before George Floyd and all of the, public, discourse and public, public protests and things. And people said, well, we've got to do something. And often we act when we think that it's an emergency. Something's getting ready to pop off. We're going to have really going to have some problems here, so you need to kind of quell things. And the response is always pray, pray. And I know prayer is good. I believe in prayer. I pray daily, and throughout the day. Couldn't make it without that. But it's more than prayer. It's put some action to it. And so if you say that if we want the church to survive and we want to continue to grow, we have to listen to look at the example of the younger folks among us, the Gen Z, the young adults among us, and to see how they are able to work together. Their friends look like the United Nations, many times, if they have that opportunity, and they're picking up from one another and working together, having fun together. And I think we could learn a lot from that. But also we can learn a lot from the struggles of our ancestors. There was a lot that they went through that they put up with, but they continue to push on and to make a way out of no way. We say, make a way out of no way. There was no tolerance for them. It was like kind of pushed to the side. And to an extent, we have that going on today. We may be sitting in the same pews, but there's a bottleneck. There's we can't seem to get through, especially I would say at the diocesan level. In the structures of the church. I'm not talking about the big hierarchy of the church, even though that's another matter. But even at that local level, there are today pastors who want to dismantle the progress that was made, really, for Black Catholics and Catholics of other cultures as well. There's an openness to the Hispanic community. And I'm not saying they don't have their struggles, but for Latino Catholics, the resources are flowing. And there are, the priests the seminarians are learning Spanish. And there's always this idea that, well, we have this group over here. This is the big part of the church, based on numbers or whatever. But what about the other communities? And for the Black Catholic community, we've been pretty steady. And often, but often we don't receive the respect, acknowledgement, the support that's needed. And it's not that we need handouts. We have ideas. We have competent leaders at our, within our, whatever.
Within the communities?
Within the communities, yes, we have strong leaders, and we have strong ideas. But what we don't have is the support from the church that other areas of the church receive, other groups receive. And I'm thinking about staffing and resources, money, to do the things that need to be done. So many of our leaders have to operate on a volunteer basis. We don't have dedicated staff. So even if the bishop is supportive of the Black Catholic apostolate, when it comes down to the needs to support evangelization, catechesis, religious education, schools, and just a liturgy, worship. There are roadblocks along the way based on the individuals who are gatekeepers who are saying no. You can't use the cathedral. You can only use the cathedral at Black Catholic History Month or for a Martin Luther King program. We can't have gospel music playing. We can't, and even in the formation programs for young men and women going into religious life is very difficult. Very little support for them, and those who make it through, it's just amazing because so many are turned away. They have a vocation, and I've had so many young men say to me, several young men, not thousands, but a few have said, that they were told, you don't look like a priest. No, I don't think so. I don't think you would make it. And then there are those who are just sort of trying so hard to be who they are. But one of my old friend of mine, he's a priest who's passed on, but when he was a seminarian, he said, you go in as steak and you come out as hamburger. You can't, and the idea that you can't be yourself, which is one of the reasons why Sister Thea Bowman is so revered. And thus, many people alive today knew her. They were her students. They witnessed her. She was, they breathed the same air as she was breathing. And that message that she had was so awesome and so relevant, and it's so relevant for us today. It's a message that we can really latch on to. I am Black and I am Catholic, and I'm proud of being both. I really, it's so important. And as I was starting to say, we understand our faith and embrace it and live it through our culture. Those stories that are important to us, the healing stories, the Gospel of Luke, where women are lifted up. And Jesus recognized children, in a society where they were property. They weren't that important. And so we joke when we talk about the feeding of the 5,000. Well, there were 5,000 men. So there must have been about 15,000 people at least, because there's going to be a woman and a child, or many of them, coming along. But they weren't counted, And that's where we are in the church today. Are we counting those who need to be counting? Are we counting those with disabilities? Are we making a space so that people who want to be in the church can be there? People who have had broken lives, that they can come back and say, God was calling me and bringing me out of this. And then are we accepting them? We're accepting young people, who have different preferences, things that seem unintelligible to the older generation, or kind of repulsive in some ways sometimes. It's unfortunate. We were young too, and we were countercultural when we were young as well. Our parents didn't like our hairstyles or what we wore or whatever, the music we listened to. And this is the same, but also things are moving very rapidly in our society today. And young people understand the networking that really is happening, the whole systems, the idea of systems, and that you've got parts that really need to work together. And that's where we are right now, I think, in the church. Is really we have a great need to work together. And I think the church needs to make a way for what we need in terms of the Black community is more vocations. We need indigenous vocations. I'm talking about Black Americans who grew up here, who understand what's going on, what we've been dealing with. And I thank God for the for the African priests and religious who have come and who are part of our community as well. But I'm also very concerned about religious vocations coming from our own native-born African Americans, and the ability for those who do come through formation to work in the community for the community. We're blessed to have bishops and a cardinal who have been, who come from us. And I feel like, they are bishops for the whole church, just as white and Asian bishops are for the whole church. But there's a special love for your own people, too. And we have tremendous needs. And I think we're really at a crisis point, that for Black Catholics, we're at a crisis point. It didn't have to be that way, but this is where we are. And we are still dealing with a lot of resistance to us. There's an anti-Black sentiment in the United States. Okay, I'm going to just lay that on the table. And because the church is a part of the United States, it mirrors that. It mirrors it too much. And to the extent where it filters through in a lot of different ways. A lot of different ways. And the lack of resources is a big one. There were offices dedicated to Black Catholic ministry. Today it's hard to even, in many places, to even have a dedicated person. I mean, often when that good person leaves for whatever reason, or dies, anything could happen, they're not replaced. Maybe a volunteer is put in their place, 5-10 hours a week. No, that's not right. It's not fair, it's not just. And there's a real need for it. And then you wonder, well, where are the Black Catholics? Well, they're everywhere. But many times they're very isolated. 75% of us are in predominantly white or diverse parishes. When you're in a Black Catholic parish that's predominantly, a Black Catholic parish, then you have that freedom to many times to express your culture until there's a change in the pastor, and then maybe that goes away too. So it's really, I think it's a crisis point for us. But I think that we have tremendous opportunities. Our office, the Secretariat of Cultural Diversity, just hosted a Journeying Together, an intercultural encounter with young people for young adult and youth ministries, including campus ministry, which brings to mind a project that we're working on in the Subcommittee on African American Affairs. Is an initiative to support Catholic campus ministry at historically Black colleges and universities. We call them HBCUs. I mean, it's very important. The diocese, there are HBCUs around the country, over 100 around the country. Some dioceses have 5 or 8 or more of these historically Black colleges and universities, and where the White House and other corporations and all are recognizing the value of HBCUs. The church has largely ignored them, and so money for campus ministry doesn't flow there. Because see, it goes back to a presumption that, well, they're not Catholic, and what is that for? And many times, even with Catholic education historically was an avenue to conversion to the faith for a lot of people. Excuse me. I know of children who brought their whole families because they went to Catholic school. Their whole families converted to Catholicism, and they've been staunch Catholics ever since. And even we look at Sister Thea Bowman was convert to the faith. Cardinal Gregory was a convert to the faith, and so many of our strong leaders were. But that's because at that time, the church believed that they could evangelize Black Americans. And Black Americans saw the value to that. Yes, a good education, that's important. And economic mobility, economic growth, and more of a piece of the American pie, if you will, because of good education. And the church funded that and supported that. Well, our church has largely moved away from that, not supporting that very much anymore. And those schools, we had consortiums of Catholic schools for the center city schools, and with gentrification in the communities right now, that the neighborhoods are changing again. They changed because of white flight, and then so there was a pouring of resources in, and now we have gentrification happening, and it's a little bit different because you've got people now. You've got other resources coming in. And will we remain faithful to, or will we be able to remain faithful? Will those communities, those faith communities, be able to remain faithful to their traditions?
So it seems like our society is evolving and changing so on a broader level.
Mm-hmm.
And what you just stated suggests that the church is best case evolving at a much slower rate, therefore that gap, that ravine
Yeah.
is outside from a sensibility standpoint, outside the community of the church and what's inside the community. It's broadening.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. That it's broadening?
Yeah, because,
I think.
it would seem like that gap should be narrowing as our society
Yes.
more broadly becomes aware of our complicated history and our obligation in the moment to tell accurate stories that reflect all of us.
Right.
So you would expect the church to sort of just be taken by that current naturally in that direction, and it doesn't
Right.
seem like from your point of view it's
No.
really
I don't think it is, and I think it's because we are mirroring too much the political scene in the United States right now. That pushback against, as I mentioned, there's anti-Black sentiment, and it's gaining strength in some areas. That argument, discussion about critical race theory, and instead of just teaching true history, but there's a fear, and I guess it's birth pains. It's like there's that fear of what am I going to lose? What's going to happen to my children? I'm losing my stake. You have the whole pie. And somebody wants a piece of it, and you feel like you're giving up everything. No. But for us, like we used to say, we are, we had to stake our ground on who we are. We are, authentically black and truly Catholic. And I take it even further than that and say I am radically black and radically Catholic. Jesus was radical, and the time for being just, yes, we're here and acknowledging we're here to me, that time has passed. We need to take more aggressive action to say, I'm here, we are here as a people, we have needs. God, we have given so much to the church, and we're ready to share our gifts, and we need something back as well. So does the church that I love me back, And in many ways, I think that we're taking baby steps. Some are taking baby steps in the right direction, but I think it's very, very slow. And I just hear too many stories of people who are just they're distraught because their churches are closing or their parishes are closing. There's no money for ministry. There are events that are happening where the broader church the mainstream church is invited, say a World Youth Day or other events like that. And yet our parishes and our communities are left out. We receive the information late. We're not invited to the table, or we're invited after everything has been planned. Okay, now you can come in, or even the idea that we need to be more inclusive. We should be inclusive from the very beginning of the idea. When the idea is conceived, we're starting to plan something, bring everybody in. And there are, at all levels, even diocesan, at the national level, parish level, there are opportunities for Black Catholics to be a part of that, and often that does not happen. It bothers me that we're not making more progress in that direction. Now, I have to give credit that I applaud those who are trying. They're having listening sessions to come together. They're convening commissions, more diverse commissions and boards and groups to within the parish or within the diocese, actually, to make sure that representation is there, that different viewpoints are heard. But I think we need to focus on the skills that are needed to listen and accompany one another. We have one of the great things that I learned from the Journeying Together encounter that was done this summer with young adults was that there was an introduction really to intergenerational dialogue. I mean, they spent time. That's really something we need to work on. I would say, in terms of skills that we need to build, one would be intergenerational dialogue. How do the different generations talk to each other? Because we all need each other. We need the wisdom of those who've walked this path before, and we need the fresh ideas of those who are dealing with the new technology and new ways of understanding the world and maneuvering in the world. We need both. And we need to not just throw our young people out there to say, just go ahead, take over, we're tired. Take over. Here's the baton, you take it, I can't go any further. No, it's I'll walk with you. I can help you to see how to get there. I can't always show you, I don't need to show you step by step, because there's things that you're perceiving and you can show me as well, that and so that intergenerational dialogue is really important. And then the intercultural friendship, to be able to have the courage to make friends across racial and ethnic lines. Most of us, our friends may pretty much look like us. You look around and everybody kind of grew up, and often kind of grew up in the same kinds of neighborhoods, and we do the same kinds of work and things like that. But really, it's a bigger world than that. And God, think of the blessings we're missing by not being open to intercultural friendship, And that takes trust. When you're a kid on the playground, kids just want to play. Children just want to play. And so they don't care. This is my best friend, And there was a time when you'd bring that best friend home, and your parents would say, I don't think so, especially when we talked about, interracial friendships in the era that I grew up in. But now it's a different world, It's a totally different world.
So, given that context, and I think it's completely self-evident that the church does need to, from just a technical standpoint, be where the audiences are. The kids are online, the church needs to be
Yeah. Well, it means, it would mean everything to us as Black Catholics to have, to recognize the holy men and women who've walked before us as saints, you know. There's a whole political process. I didn't know it when I grew up. A whole political process. There's money involved, and, you know, and also the cult of saints, this whole idea that, that there needs to be a swelling up from the community of this person. And I think we're recognizing that as our responsibility. But, and that's a good thing, I think. It just means everything to us to have somebody as acknowledged. I'm sorry, I can't. But to have, and so the six, we want the church to know, and our brothers and sisters throughout the church to know that about our contributions and the fact that we are here and we've made tremendous contributions despite all odds. There's a sort of uncommon faithfulness that Black people have had. And one of the stories that really impressed me is about a community in Charleston, South Carolina. They called it the neighborhood Catholic Hill. There was a St. James the Greater church. And of course, and I mean, during the era of the Civil War, you know, Charleston, that whole area of South Carolina was pretty much decimated. And the church and Catholics were not popular in the South. I mean, they were a minority within themselves, you know, within Christianity in the South. And so, to be acceptable, they wanted to be like the other Americans, and there was a lot of discrimination against Black Catholics there. And the resources that should have come to, that were set aside, that were set aside for Black congregations in the Catholic Church, that did not flow to that church. And so when they lost the priest, one of the priests, then they just continued on. There was a man named Vincent who just every Sunday rang the bell at the church, and they, you know, and they came, and he would lead a prayer service. And if there were consecrated hosts, he could distribute the communion there, you know, but they just carried on faithfully without a priest, without the support of the diocese. And the diocese was huge back then, but there was just, you know, there were very few priests even available, Catholic priests in that area. But even still, the will, you know, the will to support them, it was not demonstrated. And yet the people continued, and they had a school. And the school continued. And after the church burned, they continued. Vincent continued to ring the bell, and people continued to come and worship. And they called that area Catholic Hill. And it's just really an amazing story. But there are many stories like that of people who just continued on. And even if they had to worship in the basement of the church, if they had to receive communion outside, you know, these are stories that need to be told. I remember a man about my age talked about his experience in Ohio when he was an altar server, and he didn't understand why there was a line of Black people outside the church, and the priest was distributing communion. And he was the altar server, so he was holding the paten. And he just felt bad about it. He said he was 10 or 11, but he knew it wasn't right. It was snowing. It was cold. But after Mass, they were receiving communion outside the church. You know, and these stories need to be told. And I imagine that there are white Catholics who could tell stories as well, you know, of experiences, you know, wanting to bring a friend home and the parents said, no, you cannot do that, or, you know, other experiences of not knowing, being conflicted and not knowing, and that's not knowing what to say or how to act. And I think that's the tension that we're experiencing today. And that's what some of the dialogues around cultural diversity have really opened up for people, opportunities to say, this is where we use an exercise called the FIG complex, looking at the fear, the ignorance, and the guilt around race and racism, you know, and racial issues, and the tension that comes up when people even mention race. Oh no, don't go there, but we have to, you know, we have to go through there, and to go through the fire, you know, and to come out on the other side. And there's been a reckoning within religious orders. Some of the religious sisters had to have looked back. The Jesuits are looking back at their past history. And I'm telling you, the fruit that's come from that has been it's amazing. It's amazing, the things that come out of that. One of the dioceses Archdiocese of St. Louis, this commission put together a resource, a parish put together a resource. It was a Jesuit parish. And it's just a very easy look at their racial history, from the perspective of the church, from civic society, and from their parish, So what were some of the high points and even some of the low points, and where they are today. But it takes that the courage and the honesty to look at, the reality. Where did we come from? What happened that was good? What happened, where were we at a crossroads and we went the wrong way? And how do we correct ourselves? How do we correct and go back? So they say if you want to go, an African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. But you might really be going the wrong way. But anyway, you can go go alone. But if you want to go, go together. If you want to, really get to the destination, go together.
So, talk to me about some of those fruits.
Oh, wow.
So, what do we get? Do you understand the nature of my question?
Yeah,
So
I think so.
We go through that process. We walk through that fire.
Yeah.
And we come out on the other side. And in this example, or others that are salient to you,
Yeah.
what is that fruit? What do we bear as a result of that?
Oh, we gain so much from being together, from the friendship, from the trust, from building those relationships. The only way we can get anything done really is through relationships. Any projects that we're working on within the church or in life, it's really by coming together. But the fruit that I see, wow. I've been so blessed to sit at so many different tables, because, and the funny thing, when I think about my journey, I went through Catholic school, as I mentioned, and when I was in the 8th grade, graduating from 8th grade, I was getting ready to go to high school, and they give out academic awards, the best in science or the best in whatever. And I was one of the winners, and mine was in religion. And I was like, oh, no, I wanted in social studies or English or something like that. I didn't want to be a goody two-shoes. But then then I came back, and I see where God has brought me over the years, to a second career, really, in working for the church. And it's been such a blessing to sit at, I sit at an ecumenical table, with Christian churches together on the steering committee for Christian churches together, and to see how God is working in the traditional Protestant, the Orthodox, all kinds of traditional black churches. It's just amazing that the different ways that we pray, and it's an awareness. I feel richer for that, And the same thing with the working in the Secretariat, and getting to see the ways that my brothers and sisters from around the world express their faith, the things that are the traditions that are so important to them, and they're enriching, and they would be enriching to all of us. I think of a parish in the Archdiocese of Washington where there's a pretty large number of black, white, and Filipino Catholics, and they celebrate each other's holidays and feast days. So when Black Catholic History Month comes up, the Filipinos in the parish and the whites are not saying, are we invited? Should we come? They know they can come. It's their parish. It's what they're celebrating. When they celebrate, Las Posadas, or any of the other celebrations, Simbang Gabi, which is a Filipino, celebration there, feast time and prayer and devotion, everybody can belong to that and can join that. And it reminds me of when I was in grade school over at St. Anthony's. On St. Patrick's Day, we paid a quarter, we got a shamrock, and we could wear our own regular clothes instead of our uniforms. And nobody said, can we participate? Everybody participated. It was St. Patrick's Day, so, it's continue that, and it's very enriching. It's very enriching. I think about my associations and organizations like Pax Christi, which is the Peace of Christ, right? Peace and Justice Movement, and the diversity of people in that organization. I've gained so much from. It's enriching on the personal level, and the ability to be able to relate with others, and it really, it's like when you can speak more than one language. You have various reference points. It's not just that you understand one reality, you see that there are many sides to the reality. And so I say it's enriching in that regard. And I also think it's really reflecting God's view. God didn't create one type of animal, one type of flower. You go out and you see the beauty of diversity. That is what God asks us. The Curcio movement, I've been affiliated with the Curcio movement for years. De colores, and you say de colores, many colors. And that's just, it's a spiritual movement. I think, when we're talking about God, God imagined humanity a certain way. And so I am very proud to be who I am and the way God made me. But God made others the same way. I have friends who I've had associations with the National Catholic Partnership on Disability. And to be able to recognize how many people we've recognized the fact that we tend to overlook people and not see their full humanity just because their physical or mental, emotional abilities are different. And we've got, this is the thing, we'll never see the end of it in our lifetime, but we've got to keep pushing through it. And I think for the growth of the church and for the relevance of the church, if the church is going to remain relevant to people today, we have to be able to recognize and to be skilled at recognizing and working with one another, speaking each other's language, seeing each other as true brothers and sisters, not just the lip service, not just say those good words, but really mean them. And sometimes it hurts. We know in our own families, sometimes we have disputes, or we have differences of perspective, politics, different ways of, even sometimes different values. And you say, how do these people come from the same parents, or grow up in the same household? But, and that's how it is in God's house, it's the same.
I must be, thank you, I must be adopted.
Right. No.
But, yeah, you work through it.
Yeah.
So, talk to me about what faith is.
Oh, faith is my anchor. Faith is my anchor. In this world where, there's so much going on in the world, and you can go this way and that way. Faith is, it's a belief, it's a value. It's my anchor. And I say, my faith, I'm anchored in Christ. And that is my faith, No matter what's happening, no matter where I'm going, at least I have something solid to hold on to. And I think, I pray for those who don't have that anchor. And it doesn't have to be my anchor, but to have that anchor, because God has pathways. People have their pathways to God, and their different pathways to God. But I can't imagine a life without having that anchor to hold on to as I'm going through my own personal challenges, health issues, financial, relationship, all those different things, and just growing, trying to grow, trying to live, trying to live till I die, to live as fully as possible. But I don't want to be blowing all over the place, And faith is what has really sustained me. It keeps me going, to know that God loves me no matter what. I always have that touch point. I can always come back to that. That even if I've gone, in the wrong direction, that I can come back, and that God's arms are out for me, reaching out for me at all times. And it just means everything to me. I can't imagine living a life without faith, without having, and I don't mean so much doctrine and dogma of the church, but it's a relationship with Christ, that relationship with God, with the Holy Spirit, recognizing that, thoughts are coming to me, and that God is always speaking. God is always speaking. We've got to go where God is and listen to what God is saying. And so many times I've had experiences of, just impromptu conversations with people that were meant to be, that I wouldn't have known. I wasn't expecting, wasn't planning for anything, but one thing leads to another. And you're in Starbucks or someplace or a coffee shop, and you're, talking to somebody about something. And I met someone recently who, as we were just talking very casually, I said, he's doing the kind of work that my son is doing. Maybe I could, I can connect them, And he quickly gave me his number when I talked to him about my son, what he was working on. And they're both into spoken word and, all kind, just working with young people. And God has a plan for us. And God is always with us, you know? There's that hand over us, always leading us, even when we don't know where the heck we're going, what we're doing, why we're doing it, you know, if we're going the right way or not, you know, saying the right thing or not, how we're coming across, all those things that we deal with as and just being humans, God is right there.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about the future.
Okay.
And the future of the conference, the future of the Congress, the future of the Catholic community at large,
Yeah.
the Christian community, but also specifically about the Black Catholic community. And if you could take a magic wand, you know, create a reality 10, 20 years out, what does it look like?
Well, I think it looks like people doing what God wants us to do, you know, about God's business, being radically Black and Catholic, you know. I think that part is very, very important. I think I would love to see the National Black Catholic Congress is coming up. It comes up every 5 years, right? COVID threw us off schedule a little bit, but next in 2023 we will have another Congress. It's a great opportunity for us to really focus in on the important things. We develop a pastoral plan. Well, we have a basic pastoral plan, but we update it. But I really want to see us get busy with moving along the things that God is calling us to move along with. So the theme is coming from the prophet Habakkuk, and so it's write down the vision, you know, and then and then do it, you know, and that's where I think we are now. Write it down, be specific, and then do it. Follow through. God's going to show you how to get that done. That's what I'd like to see. And I'd like to see much more cooperation among churches. Christian unity is extremely important. And not just Christian unity, but the unity of those who are people of faith, you know, maybe through a different tradition. But it's just a beautiful, and whenever you've had that experience of coming together and just, even though it's fleeting sometimes, it just takes you to another level, just another level. It's possible, you know. This is what love feels like. This is what peace feels like. This is what mercy feels like, you know. And this is what justice looks like. I mean, all of those things, all those high values. That's really what I'd like to see. And I'd like to see us not focusing in on administrivia, as I call it. You know, these little petty little things and the disagreements that people have. I mean, that's natural, but I less of that. And more of what's really important and how do we get there. And it means stepping down sometimes. Sometimes it means stepping up, you know, to use your voice, speak up, you know. You may be timid, you may be not unsure, but speak up. But also for some it means to step down. You're always talking. You're the biggest voice in the room, okay? You make a big splash, as they say, whenever you come in. But make room for somebody else. I talk about a margin of grace because I think that's what we really need to do, to allow each other the space to be who we are and to recognize that one of the great things about being a human being is that we can change. We can make adjustments. We can adapt. We can correct and recalibrate. And we can start over again, you know? And there's so much that the church offers in terms of just the sacraments. We have, you know, ways to be the body of Christ. We receive the body of Christ. We become the body of Christ. We go to the sacrament of reconciliation. We can be reconciled. You know, there are those opportunities there. Just as we bathe every day, take a shower every day, hopefully, there's baptism. And baptism wasn't just once when you were a baby or when you came into the church. It happens every day. It happens constantly. So we live a sacramental life. And there's such a need for us to really take the faith beyond just memorizing the doctrine and the facts and, this is what you do, like rules and regulations. It's not that. It's really about that relationship with God. And that, God is always calling us, and not just individually, yes, individually, but also together. And that we're on this journey together. And to recognize that, what does that mean? You got to make room for others. We don't need to be pushing each other out of the way to get there first. No, we need to be making room, maybe linking arms even, and helping one another to get there. Somebody stumbles, you help them up, you know. Somebody's a little slower, you walk slower with them. Don't make them feel like, what's wrong with you? you know? I'd like to see us get more to the real things in life. Everybody knows the Catholics are against abortion, you know, but do they know the Catholic tradition and Catholic teaching on life? You know, Jesus was executed by the state, right? So we're against capital punishment. We've got people locked up in cages in this country for decades, people in solitary confinement. What is that? How can we do that to one another? And we say that we're Christians. We say that we love God. We say that we're people of God, people of faith. No way. No way do our actions show that. And actions speak a lot louder than words. You know, so why are we excluding people? You know, why do we say that you can't be at this table? And why is it that only sexual sins or misconduct or whatever is what's on display? Because you have had an abortion, or you take a certain political stance on something, that you can't receive communion. Why are we using the Eucharist in that way, and not recognizing that the Eucharist really, what we don't see is the bloody sacrifice. You know, Jesus just wasn't, with his looking great up there on the, ready for to be made into a mold. On the cross, you know, for crosses that people wear. But Jesus was really, he suffered, just as people in this world are suffering. So how is it that we're allowing billions of dollars to flow, and we're people of faith, to send billions of dollars to war, to continue war or perpetuate war, when we have people who are hungry and starving, and there's enough for everybody. God has provided enough for everybody. But what do we do?
That's great.
Sorry, it's not time.
No, you're good. Was that information only? Are we technically limited on the card?
No, we could, yeah, 15 minutes on this call.
15 minutes on this card.
Are we covering the things we need to cover?
Yes.
Okay.
We're covering a lot, but I'm going to make sure that we check all the boxes.
Thank you. Because I can talk, but
It's great. I love it when it happens just organically, you don't have to, because it's just so much more interesting, so much more cohesive.
I know we always have those ums and ers in there, but you edit those out.
You're sounding great.
Thank you.
So, the list that you were sent is really covered. Let's see what I came up with.
Okay.
So, I guess, really, I usually tell people this is my last one, and it's almost never.
That's okay. I'm at your service.
One of the last things that I think I have is, I'm going to touch back a little bit to the radically, what is it, the
Radically black and radically Catholic.
yes,
As opposed to, well, not as opposed to, but we used to say, that was, we thought we were saying something. We said, I am truly black, and was it authentically black and truly Catholic? That's it. And it's important to be who you are, and not to hold back on that, to be able to let your light shine, And I say, and the reason today I say, yes, I'm authentically black and truly Catholic. Not marauding as a Catholic, not in coming to you in disguise as a black woman. I am truly, you look and but to be a black Catholic woman is very, very much a part of my identity. I've really grown to embrace that and accept that, and I lead with that in a lot of cases. I have some friends. We talk about church matters all the time. Probably drive our kids crazy, but but we do, and because we care, But I say radically because I think it's time for radical change. There's no more business as usual for us either. as Black Catholics and as church. I think where the church recognized that it needed to embrace cultural diversity and become become culturally competent, because basically we're losing people, we're not relevant, and that I think that's the same message for us as Black Catholics. There's no more time to waste, and I do feel that there's no more time to waste. I feel that there was a high point for us, I'd say, in the 80s and 90s, 1980s and 90s, and yet there's always been the need, and yet we've been on a downward tilt for a lot of reasons. There are people who I heard our pastor say, we make really good Muslims and Protestants, and so many. When you look at the churches, there's so many ex-Catholics or former Catholics who are there, because the ritual, we have the ritual, we have the word, we had the scripture, we had the sacraments, we have all of that, and yet in many cases the church is not speaking to us, or they were tone deaf, really, just totally tone deaf, not able to recognize the gifts that we bring, or trying to section it off and say, okay, that's okay for you all over here, but not for the rest of us. And yet, I can see in my own parish and other Black Catholic parishes, you'd see the same thing, where the people who come, they could choose any parish they want to go to. Why are they coming to this parish? There's something there that they see. There's something about Black Catholic spirituality that is a draw to a lot of people. And actually, where's the church growing in the United States? It's growing in multicultural parishes, where there is that diversity, where you have those cultures. People seek that out. They're enriched by that. And that's where those are vibrant parishes often. That's where things are really growing.
That's great. So let's just expand a little bit about that call of the community. What are they calling out for? How can the church respond to that?
Well, one thing they're calling out for community, for that sense of belonging, so that you come into a parish like my parish, or another Black Catholic parish, and other parishes I'm sure are that way. I did visit a white parish, which was very similar. They had liturgical dance, and it was a predominantly white congregation, but that welcoming feeling was there, that you really did feel like you belong, and that people were worshiping, their whole selves were involved in the liturgy. So there's movement, there's music that touches your heart. And there are different styles of music. I love all kinds of music, but that touch your heart. And that you say, oh, God is speaking to me right now, in this word, in this line, in this phrase, in the homily. So you have relevant homilies, sermons about things that help people to manage their lives. And they get a message about something. Not just, I was reading in the paper and I saw, something that just sort of going over people's heads, but to really talk about the things that people struggle with, relationships, love, raising children, caring for elders, all of those kind of things. And ministry. It's important that people who are involved in ministry have a sense that recognize themselves as servant leaders and recognize what ministry really is about. This is not my club, my group that I'm in charge of, my way or the highway. This is what we're doing. We've always done it this way. No, this is God's project. And where am I blessed to be able to be of service, And what is God calling me to do in life? What is God calling our organization to do, our parish to do, our school to do, And that's what we should be following.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is there anything that was on your mind that I haven't given you an opportunity to express that you were thinking would be important?
Let me just see. I don't think. We covered a lot, but there's so much I want to say, and I'm kind of full right now. I would say I always have hope. there's always hope, and we can do better, we can be better. And I think it takes, we need to call each other out on that. I mean, in love, of course, call each other out on that. Are we really living up to what God is calling us to be? And I think we need to create spaces for people to do that. I've been a catechist for a long time. My mother wrote me in when I was about 16. Now I wrote my daughter in, but anyway, it's been the joy of my life to share my faith with young people. And I also, I recognize that the faith it's good. We have to be creative with how we relate to each other and transmit the faith, Of course, we want people to attend Mass, liturgy, every week, receive the Eucharist, and to grow in faith. But there's a need for lifelong faith formation. And I think we don't give enough attention to that. So when there's a baptism in the church, new babies are coming in. We'll say infant baptism. That should be a time for celebration. And what's happened in a lot of parishes is like, oh no, baptism, we're not going to get out of the park. I'm not going to get to see the game. The Mass is going to be extended. Wait a minute, what are we here for? I mean, that's the reality. It's like during COVID. I joke about during COVID, there are people who, they couldn't come back to Mass because it's too dangerous. I mean, COVID, but then you see them on Facebook and they're in Jamaica and they've been, they're on vacation with people. And it's like, where are our priorities? What are we telling our children? What are we telling our children when it's more important for them to be at the football game, to be with their sports team, than to be at Mass, That's been something that's really been a concern of mine. We've got to get our priorities straight, what's important. And I have to give my credit to our Jewish brothers and sisters. When my sons ran track, they never had track meets when there was the Sabbath. So when they played, or basketball with the Hebrew school, they didn't have games on Friday nights. They just didn't do it. And yet, our kids, even within our own faith, I mean, yes, maybe they could go to Mass on Saturday, but what are we saying to our young people? So we welcome in the new babies. We're happy when they're baptized, but then what happens? We don't see them again until First Communion. Then we don't see them again until they receive the various sacraments. And then there's a long lag until they get married. Maybe they'll get married in the church. But see, by then, they're turned off. We're not authentic. We're not being who we say we are. And they can sniff out hypocrisy very easily. You're speaking with a forked tongue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have a 10 and a 13, and if it's inconsistent, you can see them
That's right. That's right. They're gone. They're gone. They don't have time for it. They don't respect it. And they see that in us as well. I mean, we're human. We're going to fail sometimes. But they see you say to be loving. Your parents are telling to share and to be loving. And then what do? Do we give them that? Do we give them that example? Are we loving with others? Do we share? Are we forgiving of others? Or do we wait till we can get in there and turn the knife?
That's why in the purest sense, I mean, we get what we deserve in that respect. We put it out there, it comes back, and it is kind of this vicious circle. I mean, it's difficult because there's no, the concept of fairness is all tied up in there. And
Right.
It doesn't really belong in there because, that fairness is nice, and if you can manifest that in a personal way, that's good on you, but you shouldn't
Right.
go out there expecting it because it just doesn't come back.
It doesn't come back, and it's not even reality. And that's the thing. God wasn't fair. God was merciful. We don't deserve the grace that we receive, but God is merciful there. And so God really, that's why the concept of being radical, we need to go even beyond, we need to get to that point, I think. And I don't know if there's what there is beyond that, but it's really important to say we've got to go beyond just tit for tat. You give this and you're going to get this back. But equity, the idea that some people are not starting off at the same place. Some people are starting off in the dugout and other people are on second base. It's not fair. Some people have a lot. Some people have a little. They didn't ask. And one of the things I like I look at as, I like to look at as earned and unearned advantages and disadvantages. So we're born with certain advantages that we didn't ask for, we didn't get, but we got them. And then other people don't have those. But we're also born, some of us, with disadvantages that we didn't earn. Now, if you went to school and studied hard and got good grades, you deserve whatever, comes from that. If you didn't, there's some earned disadvantages too. But a lot of what I'm thinking about is, we've got to recognize that each other. Yes, this is it. Oh, okay.
They're out there. So I think we're covered. Thank you
Oh,
so much
good.
for your time. I appreciate
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, you're welcome. I'm sorry. Oh, you'll get it together.
they're talking away. So.
Receive something from me by email. And you sent it already? Or you say you sent it already? You just sent it? Oh, perfect. But are you traveling today? Oh, okay. Artwork everywhere. The second floor, if we want to, real quick.
Okay.
There's some artwork there.
Okay.
It's terrible.
Dag, he said dag. I haven't heard dag before. I'm gonna tell you, so I've moved around a lot the last couple of years. No. Go. And then start doing what we just did. Hold on 1 second. Are you ready? Now go ahead and start walking around. Excellent. You're doing great. You're doing great. There you go. Proceed. Awesome. Awesome.
the mayor. Regardless.
Got it. Thank you so much. Awesome. Great, that's great. Okay. Let me get a couple wides for you. Uh, Ole, are you thinking of variations, sitting and standing? I mean, I love the kneeling. I mean, I love the
Yeah,
kneeling
the
like this.
kneeling's fine.
Yeah.
I think just depth,
Okay, good.
you know, framing,
Gotcha,
but,
okay.
but not sets.
Okay, okay. So yeah, same thing? Good?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do what you just tell me what you want.
All right, cool. So you just like Oleg was saying, the key word is just meditative. You kind of
Yeah.
just let's act like you're just here by yourself.
Okay.
We're not bugging you, you know. So yeah.
Okay, a lot of times I
Yeah.
would sit.
Okay.